Hi everyone, my name is Anna. I'm talking from Aussies in Adelaide. And today with me, I have a colleague who is also our guest today. Thank you, Manpreet, for joining us. How are you?
Thank you so much, Anna. I'm good. How are you, Anna?
I'm good, thank you. Today we have a special live session. We're gonna talk about student visa and also student visa extension. Manpreet has been working with Aussies for almost 4 years now. So she has handled so many cases. She has helped so many international students to find the right course here in Australia, and also a lot of complex cases. So let's not just wait time. Let's go. I have prepared for you 15 questions, but we also have this is a question and answer session. So if anyone in the audience would like to ask anything related to student visa or student visa extension, please feel free to write down your questions in the comment section, and Manpreet will reply to you during this section. So Manpreet, my first question for you is, what documents do I need to apply for a student visa?
Thank you so much, Anna, for the question. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me for this session. I know there's a lot of anticipation happening with the news when international borders are going to open. There's a lot of questions students have. So in this session, we are going to try to answer some of the most popular questions that students have to ask when it comes to applying for student visa onshore or offshore. Starting with the very first, which is to obviously what kind of documentations you require for the student visa. Before I answer that, I'll just quickly give a little information to all international students. All international students sitting across any part of the world, if you plan on to come to Australia and you want to study, higher education, you do require a student visa. There is a certain set of process to apply a student visa. In this session, we will be discussing obviously some of the, commonly asked questions about student visa and how the process works, what kind of documentation is required. So to start with, when we talk about the documentation that are required for international students, these are different, obviously, depending on the different situation. But the most common documentation that you need to be prepared are obviously identity document. You need to have the passport with you. Apart from that, the evidence of the intended study that you're planning to do in Australia. And for that, you need to have a confirmation of enrollment. You will discuss later about what confirmation of enrollment is, but we will just broadly discuss the list of documentation that you need to have. Apart from that, you need to have overseas health insurance covering your study period. Let's say you take 1 year course, you take 2 years course, you should have overseas student health cover that is covering the intended study period. Plus you have to have additional 75 days on top purchase so that you do get visa accordingly. On top of that, you also have to provide an evidence of relationship if you're married or single. If you're single, obviously, if you update your relationship status as single, there is no further evidence. However, if you're married or you're in a de facto relationship, you need to require to prove and provide the documentation of your relationship. Generally, a marriage certificate or a de facto relationship certificate is good enough to provide your relationship proof. If you have a bit of a gap in your studies while you're applying, and if you have worked somewhere, then you can also provide your employment evidence. So a letter of service from your employer stating the service that all the services that you have worked during the period of time. And when you're planning to come to Australia, you have to provide the evidence of your employment history if you have any gap in your studies. Apart from that, if you are applying your student visa through an education agent, you have to sign 956A form. This is a form to appoint an education agent for the student visa purposes. And the student needs to have 956A form signed as well. And another one is if you have, for instance, if you're traveling with your family, if you have children traveling with you, you need to also provide an evidence of birth certificate of your child, and also another proof that you have the custody of your child. There is a form called 1229 form, which is a form to grant, to give consent to grant your children a visa who are under 18. One thing I would like to just add, there is a certain age limit that Australia have if you are bringing a child with you, in terms of having their studies also planned. So if in case you're planning to apply a student visa for Australia and you have a children accompanying with you who are more than 5 years old, they need to also provide additional evidence of their proposed study. So they need to make sure their children also have a letter of enrollment for any school that they are going to come and also study here. So all these documentations are required if you're planning a student visa.
Thank you, Manpreet. So when the candidate is planning to apply for a student visa, what comes first? Should he look for the student visa process, or he first find a course that he is willing to do? What is the right order to do the process?
I think the very, very first step has to be the research, has to decide what study option is more suitable for you. The very first step I would say is to make sure you are meeting the academic eligibility. And for that, the order is definitely to do research in the proposed options that you have in Australia. Search for the suitable education providers that you would like to take admission. Obviously, generally we advise for international students, if they have finished their high school and they would like to come to Australia, we advise them to go for tertiary qualification, which start from certificate level and goes up to obviously masters and PhD. So depending upon their age or the course that they are qualifying for, generally they have to start by looking for the study options, the suitable study option. Just to make it easy for international students, they can also use a tool called CRICOS, which is obviously will list down the number of institutions that are available for international students to study. But yeah, I will also further advise that you should not just limit your search option or research by just CRICOS. Make sure you visit the university website so that you can find out the right course option for yourself. And to save all that trouble for you is to meet an education consultant who will help you out in narrow downing the options, study options for you. However, if you have done your own research beforehand, it will obviously help your consultant to understand the nature of course that you are interested in. Once you short your study options, the first thing to do is obviously apply for the offer letter. The first thing you have to do when you send an application to the education institution that I would like to study this course, this particular course, that's when you send them a request for the offer letter. Once the institution approve your academic qualification, there is a set process they also follow, which is different, obviously, if you are present onshore or offshore. But broadly, if we discuss, then you start off with the offer letter. The offer letter, if there are any condition outlining, for instance, there is any information missing, any piece of evidence they need to, finalize your study, to give you the offer. They will do all that research, and then they will give you conditional offer letter if in case they're in condition. If in case you meet all the conditions of your proposed course that you want to study, then they will issue full offer letter. Once you are given the offer letter, it is very, very important for international student to go through your offer letter, understand the policies, understand your course, understand everything that you're going to study, the location, all those things. And once you're happy with everything, you have to accept your offer letter, send it to the institution, and that's when the payment, and they will also do the other necessary checks to make sure that the student has the genuine intention to study. That's when the GT assessment comes into the place. If you're present onshore and offshore, that process may vary. However, if you are applying for the first time, obviously the GT assessment will require to check if you have the capacity to fund your study, if you have any financial sponsor, or if you can afford to pay for your living expenses or pay for your study. So they will check if you can afford this program. They will also check all other factors that they intend to finalize a student and to make sure that student is genuine. So financial capacity, academic qualification, any gaps in the study, if there are, then employment evidence, what kind of financial documents you're providing. So they do all those sorts of checks to make sure they shortlist the right candidate. And after that, once everything is done, generally that's when the full offer comes through. And post that, after acceptance and making payment, you do get the confirmation of enrollment. And that is your final letter that now they are confirming that you're going to be a student of this and that university.
Yeah, that will be my next question. What is the COE? But you have just already replied. So before you mentioned about the CRICOS registration, could you explain what is that and why it's so important for the international students before choosing education provider?
Thank you so much, Anna. So basically, CRICOS is Commonwealth Register of Institutions and Courses for Overseas Students. This is what the full form of CRICOS. It took me a lot to memorize this, honestly. I'm just kidding. So basically, CRICOS is a government website where you can go. It will list down all the education institution which have been granted permission by states and territories to educate the overseas students. So basically, it's a tool that will give you the programs which are listed for international students to study, because not all programs that these education institution offers are for international students. So you need to make sure you choose the right program, and for that, you choose the CRICOS website help. I hope that answers the question.
For sure. And when it's related to the English, is it necessary to have an English score to start any studies in Australia, or it varies according to the type of course you choose?
When it comes to English, honestly, there's a lot of factors that contributes to that part. First thing is, if you come from obviously English speaking country, you do not need to provide the evidence of English language ability. However, let's talk about the most common one, which is generally most of the country nationals who apply for international study visa, they may require an English language ability test. There are many tests which are approved by Australia. If you are planning to come to Australia, you can sit for IELTS examination, you can sit for PTE, you can sit for TOEFL. There are different kinds of English examination which are acceptable by Australian education institution. Generally, most of the international students do require these kind of English language test result. However, if in case you have the proof that you have studied in an English medium course for a period of time, let's say for almost 4 years or 5 years, this is popularly for the student who have done engineering. Let's say if you've done bachelor's of engineering, which is for 4 years, you've done any degree which was of 5 years, and if you can obtain a letter from your education institution that you studied in an English medium, that's when you can present that letter to your institution and they can waive the condition of English requirement. However, it is not always the case for all education provider. You still need to make sure that you're prepared with your English test score. When it comes to the English test score, obviously it differs for the different level of course that you apply, starting from diploma level, obviously 5.5. So I'll refer to IELTS, which is the most acceptable by all education provider all over Australia. When it comes to the IELTS, according to the level of education that you are applying, your scores requirement may differ. And it also differ on the basis of the course that you are choosing. But to list down the very general one, it's generally 5.5, not less than 5 band if you're going for certificate 3 level of course. It can also be 5 band with some institution. If you progress to diploma level, it's still 5.5, no less than 5 band. When you progress to, let's say, advanced diploma or associate degree, it's 6 band overall. It can be less than 5.5 or 6 band overall. And in each module, sometimes, depending on the course that you choose. When you go for bachelor's or higher education, then it is 6.5, not less than 6 for masters and higher education. And if it is bachelor's, then sometimes it's 6.0 in all modules, or 6.5, not less than 6. This is the most general acceptable scores in English that all the education institutions have, except for obviously nursing and teaching. And some of the STEM courses, you may require 7 each, because those courses are very professional and they need to make sure that you have a good score in the English language test result.
Thank you, Manpreet. Related to where the candidate is there any difference for someone who is applying for the student visa offshore or for someone who is already in Australia? Is the procedure the same? How does it change?
The procedure for student visa obviously vary if you're present onshore or if you're present offshore. If you are applying your student visa for the first time and you're applying from your respective country, there are a lot of factors that are accounted. Obviously, a lot of students might have heard about assessment level, which we'll discuss later. But let's say if you come from, we will discuss later in brief what assessment level is. But if you come from, let's say, assessment level 2 or assessment level 3 countries, the documentation can be different, the requirements can be different. But the biggest difference between applying onshore and offshore is all the international students who apply their student visa while they are onshore gets an opportunity to appeal to the Department of Home Affairs if in case their student visa gets rejected. So that's the benefit an international students have if they apply while they are onshore, that they can appeal in case if their visa is rejected, if they believe that they still have a valid explanation to justify on the rejection that Department of Government has given. So that opportunity is only given to students present onshore. And if students are present offshore, they do not get the review rights. So that's the big difference and benefit for being onshore and offshore. Other than that, obviously, the documentation can differ, and those differs on the assessment level of the institutions and assessment level of the country, which we will discuss later.
Okay. When we are talking about financial proof, how does it work? When you apply for a student visa, do you have to prove that you have a certain amount to the immigration, or it varies according to the country you come from? Could you just touch bases on that, please?
Thank you, Anna. Obviously, I was just discussing about assessment level, so this question is very much associated with that. So just to give international student an overview what is meant by assessment level. So with an interval of time, Department of Home Affairs have decided to simplify their student visa framework. And for that, they have combined the education institution and country level assessments. And then they have given them ranks. It starts from assessment level 1, assessment level 2, assessment level 3. There are a lot of factors that contributes for them to be on assessment level 1, 2, and 3, but it is generally for countries and education institution both. So depending these assessment levels, obviously one states it's less risk, second state. So these levels also determine the risk. So assessment level 1 is obviously least risk. Assessment level 2 will be medium risk applicant. Assessment level 3 will be high risk applicant.
Okay.
And the same goes to the education institution. So let's say if you come from the assessment level 3 country, for example, you come from India, you come from Nepal, you come from Kenya, you come from Bangladesh is level 2. If you come from Bhutan, all those countries, those are assessment level 3 countries. In that case, you have to provide an evidence of financial capacity. Now, this is obviously applicable for the applicant, who are applying for the higher education and tertiary level of qualification, does not matter. If they are coming from assessment level 3 countries, and if they are applying for the student visa, they, for the first time, irrespective of the documentation required by the government or by the institution, be prepared to show your financial capacity, because obviously you come from the high risk level of country. When it comes to the financial capacity, it is split down into 3. First is obviously the living expenses, annual living expenses. Second part is the annual tuition fees. And third part is the return airfare. So you start off with the annual. So the amount of financial documentations that you have to provide to immigration is basically you have to indicate that you have the savings, enough savings, or your financial sponsor have enough savings to support your annual living expense and your annual tuition fees plus your return airfare. The amount decided by Department of Immigration is 21,041 for an international student, a single individual. If they are coming with their dependent, then they also have to have additional amount, which is 7,362. And if they are traveling with their children also, then the additional cost also added, which is generally 3,152. Plus 2,300 return airfare. Now, this is generally is the annual living expenses, which is decided by the Department of Home Affairs, and plus your annual tuition fees and your return airfare. Now, whatever this amount comes out to be, this is roughly is the amount that you have to obviously show to Department of Home Affairs that you have access to that much amount to afford your study and living expenses alongside your family, or if you're coming as a single individual. Generally, to prove that you have somebody who could financially back you up, you can have financial sponsors who are part of your immediate family member, such as your siblings, your first uncle or aunt in some cases, but generally it's your parents and your siblings, your spouse, and in some cases your grandparents also. And those can be a financial sponsor. Your first aunt and uncle can also be a financial sponsor. However, you need to make sure that you check with the education consultant also, because sometimes the education institution may have a very specific requirement of having only certain financial sponsors that they accept. When it comes to the documentation also, you can obviously get in touch with our team who can explain you what type of documentation are approved by these education institutions when it comes to the financial documentations.
So the proof of financials as well, it's also for the whole entire duration of the course, is that right?
Oh, no, it's actually only for 1 year. So you do not have to, let's say you apply for master's course, which is for 2 years. In that case, you only have to indicate that you have the financial capacity of obviously you need to have the whole financial expenses with you if you're planning, if you're coming here, just to be, prepared financially. However, when it comes to providing the evidence, then you only show 1 year of living expenses and 1 year of tuition fees, not 2 years.
Thank you, Manpreet. And well, health insurance, it's mandatory for student visa. So how does it work? I initially came to Australia on a working holiday visa, and immigration say it's optional to have health insurance or not. But for student visa, it's mandatory. Can you just talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. So overseas student health cover is mandatory for all international students. If you are coming here, obviously they have to make sure that you are insured, and for any sort of health issues, for any sort of, God forbid, if anything happens, you're covered, you're insured. So it's very important, and which is a very good thing that Department of Home Affairs is very particular that any international travelers who is coming to Australia have some sort of health insurance here, which is always recommended. And for students, it's overseas student health cover, which is absolutely mandatory for them to have it. However, you only need to purchase it according to obviously your proposed study, and you have to add additional 75 days on top, so that you are given additional time to prepare your, if you are planning to go back to your home country, or if you're planning to stay further in Australia, they give you additional, 30 to 75 days on top of your proposed study, just so that you can, manage. So your health insurance covers your study period plus additional days that you would like to add.
Thank you, Manpreet. Now, talking about the duration of the student visa, let's suppose someone is willing to come here to study English for 6 months and then after do a diploma. Will the person get a visa for each time of studies, or the visa can cover multiple studies in the long term, let's say a 3-4 years study?
It's very common for international students to actually apply for a package course. So what we basically talking here is combining 2 different kinds of studies, or combining a study which progresses from one to another to another. For instance, let's say the trade package, you start with certificate 3, then you progress in certificate 4, and then you progress in diploma. Sometimes when you go for the packaged program, you have to understand there is a prerequisite, or there is a requirement for you to progress in your upcoming course. Let's say you go for the packaged course of diploma leading to bachelor's. Sometimes it's very essential. You generally get benefited with these kind of package courses because you start with diploma, which is of lower level of qualification. You get the basic understanding, and then you progress to bachelor's level, which obviously give you that sort of confidence which you already have gained from the fundamental level of studies. And generally, these package courses allows you to also get the credit transfer, which means all the studies that you've done in diploma, you're not repeating that in bachelor's first year. Your first year will be waived. So obviously you'll be studying a bachelor only for 2 years. So these package courses generally offers a lot of advantage if students would like to, study some sort of professional course, some sort of STEM course in which, they want to make sure they start with the entry level of understanding and progress, higher and higher and higher. In that case, there is generally a condition that if you're going for a package for, let's say, diploma leading to bachelor, you have to make sure that you complete your diploma studies, and then you provide the evidence of your completion of diploma studies. That's when you progress in your bachelor. So same thing goes with other sorts of packages. When it comes to the English package, which is obviously generally offered to international students if in case they are not meeting the English requirement, or if they do not have English scores, let's say, then they can have English course packaged with their studies. Generally, that English course is important, and it is important for you to pass that, because that determines your understanding of language and understanding of English language, which is obviously the primary language in Australia. So they want to make sure you understand that, and that's when they progress you in the next course. So these generally have a prerequisite. So this is how package courses generally work.
Thank you, Manpreet. When we talk about preparing yourself to apply for the student visa, how long should someone save to prepare everything and get time to get the visa approved? How much time usually does it take to get a student visa granted?
Well, Department of Home Affairs say that the average processing time of student visa is between 3 to 5 months. However, which obviously keep varying. During the pandemic, there was a delay. So it depends, it varies, but generally it's 3 to 5 months according to the Department of Home Affairs. Talking about the preparation for student visa, I would recommend all international students, if you're applying for the first time from your respective country, you have to obviously allow yourself, some time, because the process from offshore is generally lengthy, because your institution first do all the checks and make sure you're the right candidate. So that filtration of the right course and the right student, and getting your confirmation enrollment can consume some of your time. So generally, if you're applying from offshore location, it can take up to 1 to 2 months depending upon your institution. Also, sometimes the institution takes a bit of a time to assess everything, and then they give you the result. And sometimes it also depends on obviously applicant's profile. For instance, if you are, year 12 pass out and you straight away want to start your education, no gaps, your profile is straight away, you have good grades from your qualification, you have a good English score. When it is simple and straightforward for them to also obviously, issue you the offer letter, or when they see less risk factors in the application, then they generally fast track the process. So obviously, it all varies on the applicant's profile. It also, depend on what kind of course you choose, because sometimes they can do their necessary checks. But from offshore, give yourself at least 1 to 2 months to complete this process. And if you're applying from onshore, it's generally much easier. It's generally the time duration is much lesser. So this can be finished within, let's say, 15 to 20 days, depending upon the time you invest or in shortlisting the option for yourself.
Now I have a popular question for you, Manpreet. If the applicant has a partner or has a kid, can this third part come as a dependent on the visa, or student visa is just for the person itself, cannot bring anyone else?
You can actually bring your partner, you can bring your children also alongside. So there is an option in your student visa to also add the members who would like to accompany you. But obviously, if your family is also traveling with you, then you have to make sure that you tell your education institution first, so that during the first stage of the assessment, when they have to assess obviously your application, it is very critical or very important for them to know who are the people coming along with you. Because obviously, if you have your dependent, your partner or your children coming with you, there is additional cost associated, on top of your living expenses, on the current living expenses that you proposed, or or the financial documentation that you were supposed to give them. But apart from that, let's not talk about the documentation, but more than that, when you have additional people coming along with you, obviously there's additional financial liability that you are, carrying with you. So you have to make sure that you have enough financial, capacity to kind of make sure that you can look after, or your family can look after each other while you're studying here, because obviously you're coming here, your main purpose is to study. But sometimes I know it's a big decision. Coming alone to a foreign country can be very daunting, and you would want your partners to support you. So it's absolutely okay to come along with your partner here in Australia, as long as you also provide documentations around your relationship and the main motive your partner wants to accompany you. Let's say so he wants to support your study plans, and you have to make sure that you tell the Department of Home Affairs very explicitly that the intention of your partner to accompany you in terms of supporting you financially, socially, in any other way, and also make sure that you indicate them that your family members along with you will go back to the home country, because at the end of the day, it's a temporary visa. When you're applying for that, and if you have family member also accompanying with you, it's generally something that may let immigration or Department of Home Affairs think that he might not return after coming with the family members. So it's very important that as long as you can justify and tell Department of Home Affairs what are the true intention of coming to Australia, and it is to support your family members financially. Of course, it's a big decision for them to come to a different country. It's absolutely okay as long as you can do that. I think there is no issues for you to bring your partner or your children with you in Australia.
Sure, that leads me to my next question. Of course, everyone who is here studying will also have to support themselves. So being able to work is something amazing for students here in Australia. So how many hours per week can a student work? And also, if they have a partner as a dependent on their visa, how many hours can the partner work to help supporting them while they are in Australia?
When it comes to the working hours, Department of Home Affairs is very generous that they offer international students 20 hours per week to study. So all international students who come to Australia on student visa, subclass 500, they are allowed to work 20 hours per week. However, if you obviously come here on a research visa or PhD, then you have a full-time work rights. But we will not discuss too much in depth about PhD and research visa, because that is completely different and it's way more complex in nature. So standard is generally, obviously, you have to have that. Just bear with me for a second.
I'm checking here. We got some questions for the public, and well, majority, of course, they're asking about PR pathways related to the courses. So we'll go back to you.
I'll answer.
We'll get back to you related to that. But we have one that is only related to education. So I'll read it for you, Manpreet.
Before that, and I'm sorry to interrupt, I'll just complete the question before the audience can get confused.
No worries,
so with the working hours, so 20 hours for all international students. And if your dependent is coming with you, then your dependent is allowed to work 20 hours if you are studying vocational level of course. However, if you come to Australia for master's level of studies, then your partner has been given 40 hours per week to work. So they can work full time if they come here on master's visa, along with the dependent, obviously, but international student will still be only working for 20 hours per week. Unless they're working in the critical sector. The list of the critical sector occupations are already there on the department website, which student can check and find out. If they are working in the critical health sector, then they can possibly work more hours. However, majority of students are allowed 20, and partners are also allowed 20 unless they come here on master's visa. Next question, I'm sorry.
Thank you, no problem. So I'll read out the question for the audience. It's from Mr. Sin. He is asking, does University of Tasmania accept students who have just completed Bachelor of Early Childhood in Australia for Masters of Teaching?
Absolutely. You definitely can apply for this course. Because as long as you're meeting the eligibility requirements. So for Masters of Teaching, they generally require 7 each IELTS or PTE. If you're meeting the English requirement, Second eligibility requirement for Masters of Teaching Secondary generally is to also provide a teaching a capacity statement. You have to write a statement to your education institution that explains your intention to be a teacher in future. Obviously, early childhood education is education related course, and teaching is it's again, there's a relevancy because you've done bachelor's of early childhood education. Now you would like to progress in master of teaching. But two things you have to keep in mind. One is the English requirement, and second is the statement that you have to provide them. Post that, after assessing the application, they can certainly help you, in giving off a letter. And for better understanding, I will highly encourage you, Mr. Singh, to speak to our education consultant, because they can explain you more in depth of your eligibility based on your profile as well. According to me, obviously, you are definitely eligible for masters as long as you meet these two eligibility conditions of teaching.
Thank you, Manpreet. I have a question for you. Let's suppose someone haven't studied for, let's say, for a long time, a big gap on studies, 10, 15 years. How likely are they to get a student visa? Can this make it a bit complicated, or it's possible?
Obviously, if you have a gap in study, that's a risk factor because you have not been studying for a very long time. It raises an alarm for education institution and also for department whether student be able to take that study pressure in Australia. Obviously, that's the first question to ask yourself. Am I ready to study after 10 years? Obviously, a lot of students, when they come to us, they're already mentally prepared when they decide to come in. And it's a big decision, obviously. So we are already anticipating that you're a mature age student. Of course, 10 years of study gap. As long as you have a justification or any documentation that provide what exactly you were doing or what was the activity. Let's take two scenarios. One is you were working, you had employment, or you were owning a business. In that case, it's very simple. You can simply provide the evidence of your, the employment statement or employment documentation by justifying that you were working in that sort of area. That is why there is a gap in studies. And then you have to obviously explain your intention why after 10 years you feel this studies will benefit you, what sort of benefits you will receive from this study. That's another thing which will be explained in whole GT statement. So this is something that they have to do. If in case they're able to do it, I don't think so there is an issue.
Okay, thank you, Manpreet.
Okay.
A student has just started the studies, have been doing for a few months, but he doesn't like the course. He wants to change because either the subjects are not interesting, it's not what they're expecting. Is it possible to change, to go to another course, to find another institution? How easy is to make this change? What is the process?
Well, this is something a lot of international does. We have seen this happening a lot, which is at times concerning, at times not concerning, obviously, because every student, every individual has a right to change their mind if in case they don't feel comfortable studying the particular course. It is very common to see international students finding it hard to adjust. Of course, the education is different. The way they teach, the way the course delivery happens is totally different. So obviously, and plus a cultural difference. So cultural shock, study shock, a lot of things can happen. We've normally seen that happening. And if any scenario happens that you are unable to, continue the current program and you would like to switch to another one, you most certainly can. However, few things to keep in mind. Try to be on the same study level. If you have been granted a student visa to study bachelor's, make sure you're studying on the same Australian qualification framework level, which is called AQF. So as long as if you come here to study master's, if you would like to switch to study another master's, maybe in a different stream, you most certainly can change your course to another master's. If you're in bachelor's, you most certainly can change it to another bachelor's, and same for diploma. What you cannot do is if you are on master's visa and you want to change it to diploma and not inform Department of Home Affairs, no, that will be wrong. If you are changing your qualification level, and if it is downgrading from master's to, let's say, diploma, you have to ensure that you inform Department of Home Affairs with a valid explanation. Generally, we recommend a new student visa application with obviously your documents for all the document or all the evidence that you need for student visa. Along with all those documentation, we encourage them to apply for a new student visa application with a valid reason. why they're downgrading, from master's to diploma. However, if you are, applying for master's to master, as long as you have finished 6 months of your principal course, you most certainly can change it. And with that, I mean, let's say you have been granted a visa to study Masters of Public Health. Once you complete 6 months studying Masters of Public Health, you most certainly can change your education provider and you can switch to another one without, requesting a release. So next part comes is the release. If in case you decide to change your mind and you would like to switch the course and you want to change it to another institution, in that case, you need to obtain the release with the valid documentation and reason to tell your education institution that I would like to get release from my current program because of so and so reason, and provide the suitable evidence to that, to all the claims that you're making. Once they approve your request and gives you a release letter, in that case, if you have that letter with you, then you can change your course at any time. So there's no such condition. So these are the conditions that you have to obviously follow. And if you're in a packaged course, then your principal course is generally the last course that you're going to study. So let's say if it is diploma leading to bachelor, then you're looking at finishing 6 months of your bachelor's, and then you can change your education provider to any other education provider.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Manpreet. When I finish my studies, can I get the 485 visa? To whom does this visa apply?
485 visa, I'm not going to talk in depth again. I'm not a migration expert, I'm an education expert, so I don't know in depth. But popularly, obviously, if I say so, as long as if you want to apply for 485, which is work visa, if you have studied higher and with any higher education provider, let's say bachelor's or master's, you are eligible to apply for 485 visa, which is granted to you for 2 years. And obviously, Department of Home Affairs has given additional years to people living in regional areas. So you can check which area you're living in, and according to that, your 485 duration will vary. And we also get a lot of questions from students that I'm studying diploma, am I eligible to apply 485? So the answer to that is no. If you're studying, let's say diploma, I mean, it depends on what sort of diploma you're also studying at the end of the day. If you're studying, let's say management diploma, like diploma of business and leadership management, or advanced diploma business leaders, social media marketing, all those sort of vocational diplomas, you are not eligible to apply for 485. However, if the diploma that you've taken the admission, if it is following the trade qualification, you are eligible to apply for the post-study work visa under graduate work stream, which is given to you generally for 16 months. And for all other applicants who've done higher education, it is granted for 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Manpreet. Well, my last question for you, I would like to know a little bit about the student visa extension. How is the process? How long it takes? And we also got a question from Mr. Hisham. He's asking, how long does it take to process the student visa extension? So if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Student visa extension, I've seen over the period of time, lot of lot of opinions, lot of notions are there, everywhere. Some people say visa extension is a very easy process. Some people say it's a difficult process. Different people have a different opinion. But to me, if in case you are unable to finish your studies in the given time frame and you need to apply for another student visa, then in that case, obviously you can put another student visa application to Department of Home Affairs stating the reason for your extension. And obviously, we've already discussed about the documentation that are required. However, just to let all international students that there has been change in the assessment level, and many education institutions assessment level has shuffled. The country assessment level is still pretty much the same, which we've already discussed a little bit. But let's say if you're going for the student visa extension, the very, very first thing you need to know is to understand what kind of documents now I need to provide, because this is not your first student visa. This is of course your second student visa. So what obviously you have to make sure is the kind of documentation you have to provide this time. And just to make sure that you understand the documentation, there's a tool called document checklist tool, which allow you to put your country name, your country and the education level And then it also tells you the documents that you need, to provide to Department of Home Affairs. Due to the change in assessment level in the visa extension process, some students may need to provide the financial documentation. But in case of student visa extension, the documentation can be different. The amount of financial evidence or the funds that you have shown can be different, and obviously which depend on the length of the visa also. And obviously the whole process itself also depends if you are extending your student visa because you could not finish your current studies, or let's say you have been on student visa, you have been on 485 visa, and now you think that you need another studies, in future to increase your skills, or for any other reasons that you are, particularly that you're choosing those studies. So now different scenario it varies, but the most popular one is you're unable to finish your studies on time and you want to extend your studies. First thing you have to make sure is you get your confirmation of enrollment either extended, or you have the proof of your confirmation enrollment, which indicates that your studies will be finished post your visa, the current visa that you're having. That's the first thing you have to make sure. Additional thing is, obviously, apart from all of the documentation, you have to extend your overseas student health cover according to the new proposed length of the studies, and add additional 75 days on top. Apart from that, international students, when they come here on student visa for the first time, they generally have to give everyone has to give the medical examination. When you apply for the student visa extension, if in case you're applying for student visa extension within the 12 months period, then you can simply provide the medical examination proof, or let's say your booking, just to say that I have given my medical examination within the 12 months. Let's say you're applying for student visa extension over 12-month period. In that case, you will also have to give the medical examination one more time, and that will be done after the lodgement of your visa. So these are the few changes you need to make. Another thing that you have to be very, very careful is the consistency in the information. Obviously, when you apply for the student visa for the first time, if in case you have changed your education in between, if you have changed to another education provider, you have to make sure explain all the possible reasons behind the extension. If in case you change your career, you have to make sure the information this time presented in Department of Home Affairs is consistent with prior also, because previously you may have told them that I would like to work in health, and now you're interested in IT sector. So obviously your future plans, your intention to study, a lot of factors will change. So you have to explain around that only, and then you have to provide the valid reason behind the extension. And obviously the other things that we most popularly want international students to add is ties with the home country, indicating that obviously this is a temporary visa and they're planning to study here and go back to their respective home country after finishing their studies.
Manpreet, we have a question from Nirod. He's asking, studying cookery in Tasmania is better or South Australia? I believe he's trying to connect it with the PR pathways for both states. Manpreet, she's not a migration agent, so she can not give you that answer, but maybe you could just tell us if there are plenty of cookery schools in both states, and also the lifestyle of both.
Well, it's choosing between states is very controversial. I'll like to stay like this, but if I have to give my general opinion, honestly, obviously it's about the interest. Tasmania is a great place, but obviously a lot of international students need to understand that it depends on the intention of international student in future to kind of look for the future opportunities, or what exactly are their plans. South Australia and Tasmania both are great states. Obviously South Australia is becoming more and more popular. Tasmania is also, very popular when it comes to study options. If you are choosing these two locations because of the migration purposes, then I would say it's best speaking to migration agent to understand what benefit you will get studying in Tasmania and studying in South Australia. But if you want to compare both the states, I would say when it comes to the opportunities of, working, when it comes to the opportunities further, just investigate about all those factors, what sort of job opportunities you may be able to get while you're living and studying in Tasmania. Let's say if that's also the part of your plan, you want to make sure while you're studying cookery, you also gain some practical experience in the cookery field. And you want to make sure you take the practical and theoretical experience with you when you go back to your home country. So if that's the intention to go there, you have to investigate the career opportunity also. But if you ask me, I would say whichever state you choose, make sure you understand that if you're choosing that state because you want to gain some practical experience at the same time, then you have to investigate and do a bit of your research. What are the most popular occupations in demand? For example, a lot of students go for hospitality jobs, which are readily availability of the jobs, and what sector they're interested in. Each state has their own specialty, their own areas they might be working on, or some of the occupation may be popular in one state, may not be popular in another. So just search those ideas and then compare, because it's not about just your academic qualification, but to also make sure the whole experience is extremely good for you.
Thank you, Manpreet. Well, we have a few questions left, but they are all related to PR pathways. So I'll ask everyone to just get in touch with our offices. We have offices all over Australia, also in India, Dubai, New Zealand, and we have a big team of migration and education consultants that can help you out with all your inquiries. Any final words, Manpreet?
Everyone wants PR. Well, honestly speaking, my advice to international students will be is that it's not at all easy. It has not been easy for a lot of people because of the pandemic. However, the way things are moving, I would like to tell all international students that don't worry if with anything in future. If you would like to get right sort of advice from our consultant, our team is present offshore, onshore, in many locations to give you the guidance. We not only try to give you the guidance around your studies, but to also make sure that you can adjust into this new culture. We help you with a lot of other factors also to make you a clear understanding of your path, or a career planning. And for me, I think planning is very, very, very important, very essential. Make sure you have done all the research, relevant research of the study options. Make sure you understand the importance of the courses. Make sure you understand the employment opportunities for yourself after you finish. A lot of students change their field after studying courses, just to avoid that you have to not spend a lot of money on different courses. Make sure you're very clear from the day one that what option suits me the more, what are the career opportunities for me in my home country, can I gain some practical experience in Australia also. Search all those options, do all that research, be very active on LinkedIn, make sure you speak to people, make the networking with the people. Networking skills are very essential. Make sure you do that so that you are connected with some of the people who could potentially help you with employment in future. Be active, be lively, obviously, and we'll try our level best to guide you through this, and get in touch with our team, and we'll try our level best that this education experience will not be daunting for you.
Thank you, Manpreet. Thank you so much for sharing so much knowledge with all your 4 years of experience in Aussies. Thank you for the lovely session, and just reach out to any of our offices, and we have a team ready to help you out with your any visa inquiry. Thank you so much, Manpreet. I see you later.